Today, we welcome Lauren Stockwell from Clinical Research Fastrack. We are just thrilled to have her because she's going to talk to us about some very specific things with training people. And of course, what's amazing about clinical research. A question I love to ask people, and I really might have to borrow something she says. It's pretty fantastic. Enjoy the episode. Right. So, Lauren, I interviewed an HR specialist and she gave us some insights into what she looks for in a CRC. What qualities do you think sites should look for in a CRC?
Yeah, it's a really good question because in all honesty, this question is not a one size fits all. This is not, there is one type for everybody. Similarly, in our personal relationships, right? I may like a man who is tall, dark, and handsome, and you may like somebody who's nerdy and dorky and likes to sit in the corner and not, I don't think so, but you know what I'm saying? Like we all have different types. And similarly, each organization has different needs. And maybe at that moment in time, you have a really robust, well-trained staff, but you need somebody who can be a really good patient enrollment specialist, or somebody who can speak Spanish, or somebody who has the patience to draw blood and do that on pediatric patients, right? Who knows what you need in that moment? So I think what we need to look for are the main overarching qualities, right? We don't need to focus specifically on one particular thing or one particular set of qualities. I want us to think about overarching big picture concepts. And to me, one of the most important ones is ownership. I preach ownership. Like I just love when somebody demonstrates and has that ownership. And to me, it's demonstrated throughout your career and throughout, even if you're young in your career, throughout your college days and throughout your high school days, right? Were they the person that just existed in college, or were they the person that stepped up and led during college? Were they the person who constantly took on more to get more? Were they the person that did more than what they were paid for, so eventually they could get paid for more than what they do? I think that those are kinds of the things that we need to be looking for. In addition to that, some really great qualities to look for are consistency. The collaborative mindset is a really big one, and like the ability to connect with people, I think, are the 3 C's that I would recommend.
I love that because I have always talked about accountability, which I think reigns supreme, but I believe that ownership takes it one step further because you can be accountable for what you're doing, but then you don't really go beyond it. You're not taking ownership of the entire thing. There is a big difference there. That's really well articulated. So curious here, which is easier, training or retraining? Why?
I love this question. This is something that I, throughout my career and throughout my process of helping support students get into this industry and the next generation to build up, I have always supported the concept of bring somebody in and really help elevate that person, really help empower that person to take it on. And I personally would rather have somebody come in who is excited to learn, anxious to learn, ready to go, like a clean slate, and be able to train that person how I want to do things. Now, retraining, we always say like it's easier to hire somebody with experience, it's blah, 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 right? All those fabulous things. But either way, in our onboarding process, training is involved. We need to train people, whether it's just here's the bathroom or, going through each step of that process of how it works at that site. So to me, if we're already training, let's start from that ground and really build that person up. And we talk a lot in class about comfort zones, and I really feel that this is such a huge thing that is missed often in this conversation. If somebody has been doing this job and doing it one way for years and years and years, and then all of a sudden we're asking them to do it slightly differently, we're asking them to push themselves out of that comfort zone. There's a statistic and a lot of data and a lot of homework around this. 95% of what we do every single day is a habit. We see this all the time. I mean, think about going to the grocery store, and I don't know about you, but whenever Trader Joe's moves my bread, I get very panicked and I'm like, where is my bread? And right, you're frantically looking around for your bread. And all of a sudden you realize that that's a habit to go to aisle 1. And you know that that's my habit that I've built. So now we can create habits with these fresh people. We can create better habits with these fresh people, create that more intentional workforce when it comes to building people up in this industry.
So this is a little controversial, but it sounds like we're a little bit on the same page on this. So I, early on running a site, I had some very bad experiences when I had hired people with experience
Mhm.
because I guess of exactly that. They weren't adapting to the way that we ran the organization. Maybe the speed of enrollment was more important to us, or maybe we were at a different type of institution that just was culturally different in some ways, and we had a real struggle there. And yet I can see that a lot of companies, I think maybe especially CROs, want people who have experience, and I get that because they're the fundamental things that we all need to know: adverse events and reporting and things like that. But it is kind of fun. I don't know if that's the right word, to train up your own person.
Yeah.
So that rolls into my next question for you, which is, how can organizations look at hiring staff and supporting them differently? And then, building that culture of training that you're talking about.
Yeah, so I'd like to start from the back, if that's cool, from that final question and the culture of
Sure.
training,
Mhm.
because I think it starts with culture and exactly what you just said, right? What's important to one company may not be important to the other company. One man's trash is another man's treasure, right? We've heard all these different cliches, but it's so genuinely true. To build a culture of training, I really think it needs to start from the top down. And I think we need to have so much ownership. Again, that ownership part of it is so important. But building this sense of servant leadership, building this sense of support for our leaders, so that way they can then trickle it down, bringing this support to them and ensuring that we build this sense of trust that it's okay to fail. It's okay to fall short. Building this sense of I'm willing to do everything that I'm asking you to do, right? Being that servant leader is so huge. So if we do that and we build this sense from the top down, we're able to create this culture of mentorship and this culture of collaboration and able to fail forward. That's something that our organization personally really implements, is building this culture of fail forward. It's okay to fail as long as we're doing it that way. In the hiring process, and to kind of answer your secondary question, in the hiring and supporting process, I am a firm believer of asking questions that really, truly, and I talked about this on a previous panel actually, asking questions in the interview that really, truly demonstrate and highlight the skills that we need versus just the checkbox questions of yes or no. Instead of saying, do you have 1 to 2 years of experience, or what are your strengths and weaknesses, right? What are these things? Let's talk to them about how they demonstrate those things. This often manifests into STAR method type questions where it's like, tell me about a time when. I like to ask, tell me how you make a peanut butter and jelly sandwich. It's so telling to hear all the details that go into somebody's thought process. And if you have somebody that just says, I take out 2 pieces of bread and slap some peanut butter and jelly on it and then put it together and then eat it, like that's not as detailed as somebody who's like, I will walk to my pantry, which is in the right hand corner of my kitchen, and I will take out the bread. I'll open up the bread, right? You allow somebody this space to demonstrate their thought process. And I think that that will allow us to understand and see how these people think better versus just my strength is delegation and time management, right? I mean, that doesn't tell us as much. What does time management mean to you? What does delegation mean to you? It's very subjective. Let's talk about really foundational questions.
People need to use that peanut butter and jelly sandwich thing to see who would be good at writing protocols. Can we just throw that out there to
Yep,
sponsor companies?
exactly.
Because if
Or
you can
progress
follow
notes.
that,
Oh my gosh, or progress notes or source, right? I mean, like the ability to articulate something is such an underrated skill that we need in these coordinators. And I think looking and seeing those non-traditional backgrounds, for example, we had a student, and I love to tell her story. So briefly, sorry. Katerina was a chef, and she had her bachelor's in healthcare sciences. And then she went to culinary school to become a chef. And she had a family member go through a trial towards the end of life. And that really inspired her to say, I want to go back and use that healthcare degree and be a part of this industry and help people live better lives, not just eat better food. So Katarina came through our program and she ended up like, she has the following SOPs. She has the fast-paced environment. She has this sense of ownership of what she's putting out there and the work that she's being given to the world, because as a chef, you really have to do that. And so she was able to get into that CRC role because she was able to connect the dots for that interviewer.
So how can we build a pipeline of qualified candidates?
Oh, I love this question too. You're just asking me the good ones today. So pipelines are a funny thing. And again, everybody has a different pipeline and a different resource. My biggest recommendation for this is to be open-minded to non-traditional backgrounds. Lead with that open-mindedness. Everybody's always like, yeah, I'd be open to hiring this. But when it comes to it, are we taking the actions necessary to actually build those people up and offer them the support and the understanding and the training that they need, right? Can we take a great medical assistant and put them through some sort of intensive training and really help ensure that they are set up for success to walk into their job confident? And at the end of the day, if you do take somebody from the ground level and really help encourage and support them, that will also lead to less turnover. I'm a huge believer of taking somebody from where they are and helping to elevate them out of that, especially if we're in different communities or different backgrounds or different jobs that maybe don't have as huge of opportunity as clinical research is. What a cool thing to go into social workers and tap into that market, or teachers. Teachers is such a great untapped market, right? They are so used to working on the fly and, working with multiple different types of people and educating people and helping people understand really big concepts. That's informed consent, right? And so there's so many different transferable skills and different types of roles that could translate so beautifully into this industry. So I would say that my biggest recommendation for creating pipelines is being open to pipelines.
Now, I think you just called us all out on that. That is absolutely true, because we say it, but then so many, even like computer systems, are looking at resumes and are just knocking people out left and right. So when someone can see past that, it is kind of amazing. I don't know how a company puts that into practice as easily without it being very time consuming, but it sure does seem important to me.
Yeah. And just to touch on that briefly, it is difficult. I don't want to acknowledge that this is an easy process, right? Everything is simple, not easy. And I don't mean to call anybody out on this whole process, because it is a difficult thing. One thing I really recommend that could help with the screening process, if instead of just best practices here, instead of looking to have a checkbox that says 1 to 2 years of experience, which is screening people out, that's the purpose of that one checkbox. Let's allow room for buts. And I say this concept, and this is something that I'm so passionate about, right? Kylie Scheidler said this at SCRS West back in June, and she was talking about the feasibility form and how we fill out this form, and it's like, yes or no, I have a negative 80 degrees freezer. And she's like, but there's no room for buts on that form. There's no room for, but we can, or my PI doesn't have experience, but he has this population and he wants to serve this population. I want us to allow more room for buts in this industry. And a really great tactic that I've seen a few organizations implement to screen people, besides that 1 to 2 years of experience, is submitting and having people submit a video resume. Right? A video introduction of people, so that way they can see their personality, their presence that they hold, their smile, their energy, right? It's a great way to not only screen people, because a lot of people won't want to submit that video resume or take that extra action. And also then you get a little flavor of somebody before you get to go into that room with them and have that interview.
Those were really great tips. I really like those a lot. So last time we were talking about training up people who are research naive, either completely or just they're new to clinical research. So how can we work to effectively train people so that they can come into the workforce when they don't understand our industry yet?
Oh my gosh, yeah. This is literally us. This is what we do. This is our bread and butter. So this is something I am personally super passionate about, is taking somebody who's naive and equipping them with the tools in their tool belt to at least know where to look and what to ask. I mean, so many of us in this industry, and I think you could walk into any conference or log on to LinkedIn and throw a rock and hit somebody who fell into this industry, right? We all got here on accident. Even Elizabeth Weeks Rowe, who is so well known in this industry, wrote that she got here and was trial by fire, right? And she had to make it happen as quickly as she possibly could. And so if we can equip somebody with really intentional baseline training, really quick and fast, I mean, these sites have such good intentions with their training programs. They have such good, wonderful things set out to ensure that this person feels successful, but things pop up, right? More distractions, all these things. And honestly, they have this process of training, but things come up sporadically. And so it's hard to get all of that information in a condensed amount of time where you can walk in confidently. So my goal is to always have somebody have this really deep, immersive program that is both collaborative and engaging and exciting and interactive, really, right? Making sure that these people are involved in their training. And then sprinkling in the, okay, now let's repeat that process throughout the next 6 months as things pop up. One other thing that we always like to encourage is offering a safe space for discussion. Oftentimes we get into our roles and we know why we have to do something, and we understand, we know that we have to do something, but we don't know why we have to do it. And we're afraid to ask because it'll make us look silly or it'll embarrass us or whatever that looks like for that person. And so offering a safe space to ask those really, really not dumb questions, but those silly questions, I don't like saying the word dumb questions, is so important. And that's something that we really embed into our programs, is that safe space to do so.
So wish people would get over thinking that there are dumb questions. The only time I could think that, or even whatever the word would be, but the only time I can think it is when you've been told it multiple times. Now it's not looking so good. But there are absolutely time. I bet we could go into any company and say, but why do we do this? And if we ask it enough times, we're going to find something that was put into practice like 7 years ago. No one knows why we do it, or connected to an old electronic system software that we used to use that we don't, it doesn't matter anymore. And the fact is that asking that could be a process improvement for the whole company. But it usually takes someone new to even see it because of the beginner's mindset.
Exactly. Right. In those comfort zones, right?
Yeah. So you and I connected, I think, in a lot of ways because we are amazed and excited about clinical research. I'm asking you the question I ask everyone: what's exciting or amazing about working in clinical research?
Clinical research just touches everybody. It empowers everybody to live longer and better lives. One of my favorite things that I always like to say is we are in an industry that is adding more birthdays. We get to give people more candles on their cake, and we get to celebrate people for longer. I know my family personally has been intimately touched by clinical research and the advances that have existed in this industry over the last 20, 30, 40 years. And I'm so grateful to work in an industry where I can help my family live longer and better. I'm a big believer that we're not just helping the person in the bed, we're helping all of their family and everybody that they touch and everybody who loves them. And what a cool thing that we get to do that each and every single day.
Giving people more birthdays. I've never heard that. That was gorgeous, Lauren. Thank you so much for your time. I really appreciate you.
Of course, it's been such a joy, and I'm so grateful to be here.